Friends, before watching the video, please subscribe to the channel and like it. This will help me promote the content and give me motivation to continue doing this. Thank you in advance. In the quiet Sicilian town of Santa Croce-Camera, life flowed measuredly and calmly. No one could have imagined that it was here that one of the most shocking dramas in the modern history of Italy would unfold. The story of Veronica Panarello and her son Lorenzo shocked not only local residents, but the entire country, forcing people to think about the dark side of family relationships and maternal love. Veronica Panarello was an ordinary woman, as it might seem at first glance. She was 28 years old, she was married and raising two sons. The eldest, Lorenzo, was 8 years old. He was a cheerful boy, loved to play with his friends and, like many children his age, sometimes caused trouble for his parents. No one could have imagined that an ordinary November day in 2014 would be the last in his short life. November 29, 2014 began as an ordinary day. Veronica, according to her, took Lorenzo to school early in the morning. However, when it was time to pick up her son, he was nowhere to be found. The worried mother contacted the police, reporting her child missing. Her story sounded convincing. She had left her son at the school gate, as she did every day, but he never showed up. The police immediately launched an investigation. Teachers and classmates of Lorenzo were interviewed, CCTV footage was reviewed. The entire city was on its feet in search of the missing boy. Volunteers combed the neighborhood, hoping to find at least some clue. The tragic ending came that same day. Lorenzo's body was found in an abandoned canal near the Panarello family home. The boy had been strangled with an electric cable. His body bore signs of violence. The news of the child's death shocked the local community. How could such a thing happen in their quiet town? The investigation into Lorenzo's murder became a priority for the local police. Investigators worked around the clock, trying to collect all possible evidence and testimony. They interviewed neighbors, family friends, and looked at CCTV footage from the area. Veronica Panarello was the focus of the investigators from the very beginning. Her behavior was suspicious. She seemed too calm for a mother who had lost her child. In addition, there were inconsistencies in her testimony. Initially, Veronica insisted on her version of events. She took Lorenzo to school, as usual. However, an investigation showed that the boy did not show up at school that day. CCTV cameras also did not record his arrival. Investigators began to dig deeper. They looked into the Panarello family situation, interviewed relatives and friends. Gradually, a picture of a not-so-perfect family life began to emerge. Neighbors recalled sometimes hearing loud arguments coming from the Panarello home. Some noted that Veronica sometimes seemed irritated when communicating with children. A breakthrough in the investigation came when investigators found an electrical cable similar to the one used to strangle Lorenzo in Panarello's home. An examination confirmed that it was the murder weapon. Under the pressure of the evidence, Veronica began to change her story. At first, she claimed that Lorenzo had died in an accident and that she had hid the body in a panic. Then her story changed again. She said that her father-in-law, Lorenzo's grandfather, was involved in the boy's death. These allegations shocked the public and brought a new twist to the investigation. Veronica claimed that her father-in-law had sexually abused Lorenzo and that he had been an accomplice to the murder. These statements caused a storm of emotion in a small town where everyone knew each other. The investigators carefully checked these allegations. They interviewed Veronica's father-in-law, examined his alibi, and checked all possible connections to the crime. However, there was no evidence to support Veronica's version. Meanwhile, the forensic examination of Lorenzo's body provided new evidence. A time of death was established that contradicted Veronica's initial testimony. In addition, traces of DNA matching his mother's were found on the boy's body. All these facts together led the investigators to a shocking conclusion: Veronica Panarello killed her son herself. The motive for the crime remained unclear, but the evidence was irrefutable. In October 2016, Veronica Panarello's trial began. The courtroom was packed. Local residents, journalists, representatives of public organizations, everyone wanted to hear how this case would develop. The prosecutors presented the court with convincing evidence of Veronica's guilt. They talked about the inconsistencies in her testimony, the evidence found, the results of the forensic examination. They also brought in expert psychologists who tried to explain the possible motives for such a terrible act. Veronica's defense tried to build an argument on the fact that she acted in a state of passion, that she had psychological problems that were not diagnosed in time. They also continued to insist on the version of her father-in-law's involvement, although they could not provide any evidence. Veronica herself behaved ambiguously during the trial. Sometimes she seemed completely indifferent to what was happening. Sometimes she began to cry. Psychologists analyzed her behavior, trying to understand what could have led the mother to kill her own child. The trial lasted several months. During this time, dozens of witnesses were heard, hundreds of pages of documents were studied. The story of Veronica and Lorenzo did not leave the front pages of newspapers. It was talked about on television, discussed on social networks. Finally, in October 2016, the court delivered its verdict. Veronica Panarello was found guilty of murdering her son Lorenzo and sentenced to 30 years in prison. The court rejected all defense arguments about insanity and found no evidence of anyone else's involvement in this crime. The sentence caused a strong reaction in society. Many considered it too lenient, demanding a life sentence for the mother killer. Others believed that Veronica herself was a victim of a mental disorder that was not diagnosed and treated in time.